Okay, let's get stuck into it. Kia ora, good evening, welcome wherever you're joining us from tonight. Welcome to this first of 4 live video conversations made possible by the Caulfield RSL and the New Zealand sub-branch of Victoria RSL, and then some really generous members of our community. I just want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm joining you from tonight, the Wurundjeri people of the Colin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend this respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who might be joining us this evening. Before we get into the conversation, I'd also like us just to pause and remember those that have made the ultimate sacrifice in the service of their country. If you're comfortable and able to, I'd invite you to stand, and I'd like to read the ode. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
We will remember them.
Thank you. My name is John Capon. I'm a psychologist, and I'm privileged to have recently joined the committee of the New Zealand sub-branch of the Victoria RSL as a welfare officer. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking to the leadership of the New Zealand sub-branch and Caulfield RSL, and we all agreed that, I guess, during such testing and uncertain times when we can't be physically together, that it's important for us to find ways to stay connected and support each other to help ourselves stay well and hopefully support each other to be doing more than just surviving and hopefully thriving. So these live conversations are the result of those discussions, and if nothing else, I hope that's what you take out of it, that we are all in this together and we can get through it with the love and the support of one another. Tonight we're privileged to be joined by psychologist Dr. Dave Anthony and Caulfield RSL President Colin Bradley, and they'll be sharing their experiences, their tips and advice on how we can remain emotionally flexible and maintain our psychological well-being during these times. But also importantly, what supports are available if you are concerned about anyone's mental health and well-being, including your own. And I guess obviously, just given the topic, it would be remiss of me not to say that if you do find anything that we talk about tonight distressing or overwhelming, for any reason, please do talk to someone. Be that a loved one, a trusted mate, or if there's no one that's there with you, please call one of the great helplines that are out there, like Open Arms, Lifeline, etc. And I'm going to paste the numbers for some of those different services in the chat function now. So please just know that you're not alone, and there are people out there that are willing to provide that support. Let's see if I can get that in there now. Okay, should see some of those support services there now. Final thing, as Cameron sort of mentioned just before, for anyone joining us, before I let Dave and Colin introduce themselves, give you a little bit of background to them, we do have a Q&A function that we're testing out tonight. If you have got any questions, or if there's anything comes up during the conversation that you want Dave, Colin, or myself to answer, please send through the questions and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. Or if there's anything particularly important that comes up, we'll try to jump on that as it comes up. So Dave, Colin, over to you. Quick introductions, please.
Great. So, thanks, Colin. So kia ora, everybody. Dave Anthony is my name. I am a psychologist. I've started my psychology career as an army psychologist in the Australian Army back in the mid-2000s and spent 6 years full-time working around Australia and overseas, supporting our defence personnel doing what they do. Personally, professionally, a really rewarding experience, one that taught me a lot about the importance and the value of looking for ways to do things differently in light of unique environments, and one that continually humbled me into ways that allowed us to support our defence personnel. I jumped out of full-time service back in 2011 and went back and did some more study, did a Master of Sport and Exercise Psychology, and then went on to do a PhD in Performance Psychology. And I was really lucky, again, to be able to draw from my experience to inform areas of interest in sport and performance, and this notion of thriving that John touched on. But I've been really lucky to continue to be able to work with various aspects of defence since getting out of full-time service, and looking for other ways to support our former serving community. I was involved in the Invictus Games program here the Australian Invictus team for 3 years, and really enjoyed that, and continue, sort of a corporate psychology setting as well as a sort of a community mental health setting currently. So that's a little bit about me. I'm looking forward to tonight and the questions John has for me, and also what the attendees do as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Colin.
So my name is Colin Bradley. I'm the current president of the Caulfield RSL. I joined the New Zealand military back in 1975, so quite a long time ago for me now. Did territorials, never actually joined into the regular army, but was there for 3 years on and off before I came to Australia. My qualifications aren't quite the same as you two guys, but what I have is a passion for an RSL network and for veteran welfare. And the reason I am in the position of current president, I guess, is because I saw a need in our club, one of the oldest, if not the oldest city club, to bring veteran welfare much closer to the hearts of the community, have a passion for PTSD and what that relates to in our community, particularly in the veteran side of our community. So that's what brings me to this discussion tonight, and happy to let everybody know what we're doing as an RSL, both New Zealand and Caulfield combined, to help our veterans and elderly citizens within our community.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Some interesting stuff already starts to come up through there that we'll touch on a little bit tonight, because I think there's some really important stuff that that we can highlight in terms of military service and some of the things that the skills, the capabilities, the qualities that serve us well sort of through this process, but then also some of the things that you talked about, Colin, in terms of that real passion for veteran welfare and well-being. Some of, I guess, being able to highlight and make sure that we continue to live those things that are important to us through these challenging times. So yeah, thanks for those insights. I guess an easy question to get us started. How has life changed for you both, and what's one thing that you're doing to, I guess, to care for yourself and your family's well-being?
I'll let you answer that one first, Colin.
Okay, right. Well, isolation's been good in some respects because it's allowed my wife and myself to actually do things that we've been putting off for a long time. So that side of it's pretty good. But now I think the pressure of not having a choice is becoming hard to come to grips with. So when we came back from New Zealand, so went into self-isolation. Now we're just in the normal lockdown, but we don't have a choice. So that's becoming harder and harder to come to grips with every day. But what we're doing is we're going for a walk. The two of us are going for a walk every day for, on the good weather, sometimes 2 walks a day, which we're finding really good because it relaxes us and gets us out of the stuck at home sort of environment. Maybe we'll go shopping down to a local milk bar or something and just bring something back just as an excuse to get out of the house. And the other things, what we are doing, which is good, is we're tending to do a lot more things together, like cooking. And I know that's become pretty big on the internet, that guys are doing a lot more cooking at home. So I can attest to that. It's what we're doing anyway.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I'm certainly doing a lot more cooking and childcare duties at home as well. Yeah, thanks, Colin. Dave.
Yeah, look, it's crazy to think where we were a month ago even, and how life has changed since then. for me, it was I think it was a Thursday afternoon in the office, and then a Monday morning working from home, as the primary business that I work for, sort of the parent company made a decision to direct us all to work from home when we weren't doing client-facing stuff, and it wasn't an unfamiliar experience, but like Colin, I think for me, the adjustment's been that it's been consistent. In a role that I travel a fair bit for, and I'm not at home as regularly. It's been a real struggle to adjust to that, and even to the extent of the things that I used to do for self-care, like going to the gym and sort of group training and stuff like that, not being allowed anymore has been a learning experience. So, one of the things that we're doing at home to try and adjust is sort of revisiting this notion of work-life boundaries and having a level of flexibility that it's not just about me and my work, it's also about the other people in my household's responsibilities and requirements for their work and life, and probably having more of those discussions about what has to happen today and what can we be flexible about, and getting out of the office at a reasonable time to ensure we've still got some quality time together away from devices and computers and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, all good tips and strategies. There's something that comes up through that I guess through both of what you sort of said, that I think Colin, you said lack of choice, and then there's almost this notion of there's this enforced isolation. So it's almost like these choices have been taken away from us. Where I don't want to say civil liberties, but that what is it that's challenging about not having that choice? We don't have the choice to go out and do what it is. And Dave, from your perspective as a psychologist, what do you start to sort of see sort of playing out there? What are some of your thoughts on that around sort of this lack of control, locus of control?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's sort of this, we're creatures of habit, and part of habits they're our choices, right? They're the things that we really enjoy doing, part of our routine, and when that gets restricted, or we get told that we have to change as opposed to making the choice to change, it's really confronting, because we're losing that sense, for want of a better word, of control. We're losing that sense of choice, and that's almost a core human tenet. It's this sense of autonomy and control that is critical in how we live. And so when that gets taken away, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about COVID, but in any of those situations where it gets taken away from us, that's when we feel this anxiety, this difficulty, this compromised well-being.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to go next, was this idea that there's so much uncertainty, insecurity, be it job insecurity, financial insecurity, health anxiety, even down to concerns about providing for basic human needs, like food, shelter, God forbid, toilet paper, and we start to see kind of some of this panic buying, and it seems like every news article or newspaper in the news that there's this talk about stress and fear and anxiety. So can you give us any insight into why this might be the case from a psychological perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can go back to that notion of sort of the lizard brain or the reptilian brain, whatever you want to call it, and those sort of core basic needs, the shelter, the food, survival is all sort of based around the before we evolved into the higher beings, or whatever you want to call us, that we are now. And so that initial sort of, for want of a better word, the fear response can be described sort of as the fight-flight kind of response to the situation. This is something that I'm uncomfortable with. It's something that I'm unprepared for, and therefore, what do I need to do? Do I need to fight, for want of a better word, or do I need to flight? And that's where this sort of fear response comes in. And if we pull ourselves, well, that might be the wrong wording, but if we take the time to think or identify that reaction may not be the most useful or effective, and look for other ways that we might be able to respond, that's when we have the chance to get out of our lizard brain and into what we call our smart brain, which is where we have better capacity to make decisions. That's where all our sort of cognitive thought is based.
Mm. Yeah, so any other, I guess, tips, tools and strategies for how people can then best manage that stress response, and in particular, I guess, those challenging thoughts and the difficult emotions that tend to accompany them when they come up? Yeah,
great question. And management's key. I think it sort of, for me, it acknowledges that it's not, this, in this sense, sort of controlling your emotions is sometimes unrealistic, because emotions are part of life. We should feel scared. We should feel angry. We should feel afraid. We should feel happy at times. So one or the other isn't necessarily wrong, but it's our response to those that's important. So what do? It's giving ourselves the opportunity to, one, acknowledge those emotions, that what is most helpful in this situation, and what are other ways that I might be able to respond that is better for me in the current moment. And that may seem a little bit what's the word I'm looking for, a little bit fluffy, but the reality is, acknowledging our emotions is the first part of I guess, accepting it. So labeling them and saying, yep, I'm angry now, and what are the other ways that we can respond to this, or what's most important for me right now, and focusing on those questions that give us more insight into more appropriate behaviour.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and so I guess if I boil that down, any and all of these kind of emotional reactions or these challenging thoughts, they're a totally natural and normal way for us to respond to kind of the situation we're finding ourselves in, right? Like it's and it's not whether or not they're right or wrong. Probably the big thing for me is whether or not they're actually helpful.
Yeah.
And if we're kind of sitting there going, is it helpful me being angry right now? And I kind of go, yeah, no, it's not helpful. Then I need to be able to make space for that anger to be there, but then I also need to find more adaptive ways or helpful ways of responding to the situation. Is that a good way of kind of summing up?
Yeah, a great way to sum it up. And the extension to that is, sometimes the more adaptive ways is actually talking through that challenge or that emotion and what's driving that challenge with a significant other or a mate or a family member.
Yeah, and Colin kind of talked. You talked about that passion for veteran welfare and well-being before, as being something that sounds like it really drives you. And I quite often like to think about these challenging times when those difficult emotions come up for me. That's a real indication that something's important to me. I really value something, and something's either been unfair or. And one of the things for me is to then refocus on what is it that is being triggered that's important for me, and how can I make sure that I continue to live those values. Does that make sense? So, I guess, Colin, then from your perspective, what are you doing, and what sort of service and supports might be available to our members if they are struggling to?
I think people, if they aware the welfare side of an RSL is not closed. We know all the clubs and pubs are closed, so the RSL as a trading entity is closed, but the welfare side of it is still open and still in full operation. So I would guess every RSL, but particularly we'll talk about Caulfield, the New Zealand sub-branch, we had somebody on full-time on the phone, so 24/7 the phone will be answered. It'll go to Cam usually. So he will direct the call. So we have our full welfare office set up and going. We've got the website is updated on a daily basis. So some of those places that you put up on the notes just before, John, if you go onto our website, you'll see and look towards the welfare page, you'll see a comprehensive list of all the partners that we have. for additional help, like the Veterans Affairs, Beyond Blue, Legacy, Stride Through Nation, Young Diggers, Open Arms, and so forth. So all of those are available with information about what each of them does and can help you with. We're also doing daily phone calls. So we've got somebody in the club, Sean is in the club, and Cam, that are making daily phone calls to all of the vulnerable veterans and members. And that phone call has been invaluable to them, because what it's doing is it's opening up a channel of correspondence with them that they never thought that they had. We are now also delivering food parcels and help where we can to those that need it. And that's all come through with one-on-one telephone conversations. And I think that's very important for the club to know. But for any of the listeners out there, if they need somebody to talk to, that's also available. They could make a call to us. We'll help them, put them in the right direction. Also, if they just want to chat, we've got a number of our members that are really used to going into people's houses and chatting with them and things like that. We can set up just a friendly chat rather than a deep mental issue. If they don't think that that's appropriate, we're just happy to chat with them, talk about what they want to talk about. And I've personally found some of the things, even the home things that I found with what you guys were talking about just before, David, was you listen to the news, and the news is all monologue at the moment. No matter which channel you listen to, it's all the same stuff. It's all doom and gloom. And I found myself now turning the news off, but then the next day I want to turn it back on to look for the good news. How many decreased cases have we got? So some of the things that I look for now when I listen to the news and when I'm talking to my friends is, yes, we're coming down. We're getting towards a curve, or whatever they like to call it, but we're getting less cases every day. So for Australia, that's good. So it's not all doom. We've got to look for the bright stuff coming out of what appears to be very doomy information coming from the media.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point in terms of the choices we make in terms of media consumption, how often and who we get our media from, and kind of social media and that, because I think you're right. It is just a constant stream of what seems to be quite negative and dire stories at the current point in time. So yeah, I think making smart choices in terms of who you turn to as a trusted source of information is important. Colin, you mentioned that the Caulfield RSL line is manned 24/7. Am I right that that's just the main line 9528 3600?
Yes, and that will be directed to Cameron's phone. Fortunately for us, our manager sleeps with the phone by his bed, so sorry, Cam. But yeah, look, if anybody does need, Cameron's very, very good. He's well on top of veterans' needs, so he will direct the phone call to where it needs to go to, and in most cases he'll be able to answer things pretty quickly. And if needed to go onto the welfare part of the club, that's where we'd see it. But we have 3 people working basically in a full-time capacity still at the club, so most of the things that need to be done, deliveries or assistance, can get done fairly quickly.
Yeah, I've seen a sort of a comment come through from one of our participants saying that in terms of seeing positive things, there are things like museums and zoos that are now streaming live, and so we can kind of get online and see some of that positive stuff if we really want to. I think that's a really good point. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not just about Tiger King as well. For those that have seen the press on Netflix, good suggestion there, Shauna.
I actually had a friend send me through a photo. A friend's wife actually sent me through a photo of him dressed up like the Tiger King. It was quite
right.
Anyway, Dave, I guess we're the better part of a month into this, let's call it kind of situation crisis, and there doesn't seem to be any real sign that the restrictions that we're under are going to be relaxed anytime soon, or that those threats are going to go away anytime soon. So what if any do you see as being the long-term risks to well-being, and I guess what warning signs do you think people need to be aware of in themselves and others?
I think I think one of the risks relates to this notion of habit forming, and what I mean by that is, if we look at some of the research around how long it takes to develop, a sort of a new habit or a new skill, it's usually around sort of 3 weeks of consistent exposure to that skill, or that habit, whatever it might be, or that behaviour, I should say. So when we talk about the danger, I think, is this style of living that we're engaging in is becoming our norm. And for me, that's this continued isolation leads to a tendency to disengage or not connect potentially as much with your social supports that are critical to allow us to move through those difficult periods. And the really important thing that allows us to perhaps challenge some of those difficult periods is this notion that social support isn't just about being supported, it's also about supporting. And again, it's a really sort of prevalent factor in some of the more recent research into social connection and the prevention of mental ill health or the prevention of mental ill health and illness, is social supports as a key protective factor. And critically, that's me supporting others and also being supported. And so when we're looking at the advice for how someone might look into or look out for others' well-being, we go back to this notion of behaviour change. If we know these people close to us well, what are they starting to do that they didn't previously do, or did they normally call me every week or so, and I haven't heard from them for a couple of weeks? Or they a little bit more disengaged or snappy when I'm communicating with my significant others or sort of kids or whatever it might be at home. It's actually sitting down and having that difficult conversation. And there's plenty of ways that we can do that. The only thing that I'll say about it is without sort of rehashing things like the "Are you okay?" conversations and stuff like that, call out the behaviour that you see has changed, and have that difficult conversation. That will speak bounds in terms of showing that you care for that person and allowing them an opportunity to feel like they're cared for, and therefore opening up.
That's a really, really important point in terms of notice the stuff that's out of character, notice changes that might start to creep in over time. And chances are, if your gut's saying, hey, look, something doesn't sort of seem right, either with myself or with someone else, have the conversation and let people know that you care enough to have that conversation. That's a really great point. Thank you. I guess then, social connectedness, I just want to kind of keep on that point. Colin, the RSL, in my mind anyway, is such a great meeting place, and for many people, I guess it's a social one. So even though we can't open the doors to members at the moment, what are some of the initiatives that are sort of in play to keep members involved and provide assistance? And what suggestions do you have for members wanting to stay connected with one another?
Okay, so as I said before, we've gone, besides our normal hard copy and emailing out to our veterans, what we've started doing is telephone conversations daily. So there's a list of people that Shauna and Cam will go through, 10 each per day, and get through those where they can, stop and talk to those that need a little bit more assistance. And in some cases, that's meant that they've rushed out of the building and taken groceries and deliveries and things like that. So what the upshot of that is we get a much better understanding of what our veterans' needs are. We've organised, as I said, food parcels and drop-offs, but also things like gardening and maintenance that they might need. Some of these people are unable to do their own gardening, and their gardener might not have come. So that's a good segue into socialising with them. So we can organise our gardener, or we can go ourselves. And the other thing that we're about to embark on is looking at replacement of smoke detector batteries and all that sort of thing that elderly people have difficulty doing. This is the right time, daylight savings. So all of those questions will get asked of them. We've also sent out today, Shauna sent out an email to everybody, but also sent out a hard copy to those veterans, because we've got a lot of people that are over 70, not on email and things like that. So we reach out to them with a hard mail copy and things like that. So try and include them in those types of activities. So what we would like, and what we try and do, is also encourage all of our members to contact another member. So for all of you in there listening at the moment, so if you contact somebody that you wouldn't normally contact, which is what you were talking about just before, I think eventually that'll get round our membership, and also other members, because a lot of our members are cross members with other clubs. So we've got a lot of friends at other RSLs and other networks. So if we can do that once or twice a week, where we can contact a member or a person that we wouldn't normally contact, which is what you were alluding to before, I think that'll go a long way to easing people, discomfort and anxiety. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Colin. Look, and I'm sort of conscious that you're not a massive team, right? And I'm kind of sat here going, I think I'm in a pretty privileged position at the moment, that I'm able-bodied, that I'm fairly healthy. And I'm sure we have kind of other members that are out there in the same situation that are sort of saying, hey, look, if there's anything that we can do to help, like if there are people that need their lawns mowed or need groceries picked up for them. And I'm just wondering, and this is maybe it's something for us to take offline later, is there any way that we can start to connect those members that are in need of help with people that are able to give and offer that help?
So predominantly in an RSL network, it is the elderly people, the elderly members, I should say, or older members, that do a lot of the volunteer work. So I would just suggest to all the listeners today that, if you have time, if you're able to, because it's something that you're allowed to do, it's classified as work. So coming and picking up something from the RSL or from the shops and taking it somewhere is classified as work. So any of the younger, more able-bodied members, yes, please put your name down on the list. Ring Shauna, ring Cam, ring myself, or ring James Steedman, or James Hoeker Smith, and put your names down so that we can coordinate things together.
Fantastic. No, that's great. I'll put my hand up and say I'll be in touch with Cameron to say what can I do to help. And I'll sort of put the call out to anyone else that's listening, that if you've got any spare time or you are healthy and mobile and able to, give someone else a hand. I think that's really fantastic.
And if you're a young member, still put your hand up if you need help.
Oh, definitely.
For certain, put your hand up if you need help.
I guess then let's turn our focus now to something a little bit more positive. But what can we do to help ourselves stay mentally well, right? Like we kind of talked about people fall through the cracks and I guess the impact of kind of stress and threat. What can we do to, I guess, to protect? What can we do to stay healthy and hopefully stop ourselves from kind of going from that really healthy space to unhealthy, unwell space? What strategies do you have for people over the coming days, weeks, months?
Yeah, I think Colin called out one earlier that it's really important to be aware of is limiting the information that you're receiving or that you're exposing yourself to more so, whether that's on TV, whether that's on social media, is sort of being mindful of how much time you're spending on those devices, because essentially if you think about what a brain is, it's an information processing machine, and so any information that you sort of expose yourself to, for want of a better word, your brain needs time to process that. And if it's all sort of the heavier stuff that relates to COVID or what's going on around the world, then that will have an effect on your well-being. So I'd encourage you to look at how you limit the time that you spend on sort of those platforms. And there's a range of strategies you can do. A really simple one, I guess, is setting aside a time where you're going to get on social media or talk to your mates or family members on those platforms, but then also making sure that you're adhering to that time during the day or at different times during the day, and then just putting your phone down and giving yourself a break. The other really interesting or important consideration, I guess, is looking for those opportunities to, again, something that I touched on earlier in terms of habits, is looking for ways to develop good habits early, whether that's avoiding the junk food, but one of the other really interesting ones is, what are the ways that we engage in some sort of physical activity? Colin's example, walking to the shops, or using that as an excuse to get out of the house, or, the ideas that have been discussed around supporting other members. I think Shauna threw up a comment about, the older members potentially not asking for help. I'd look at the opportunity to go and just provide them welfare packs without even asking at times. Might be overstepping there, but sometimes when they're on their doorstep, they might be a little less inclined to turn you away. But one of the things that I think is really interesting to think about from a mental wellness perspective is, this notion of hobbies or habits that you may not have done previously. It's this learning opportunity, or this opportunity to explore other things. And there's a researcher called Kelly McGonigal. I'll post up one of her famous TED Talks in the chat. But she's also put some really good work into how we develop new habits or healthy habits. And she calls it these 3 E's, which are all about ease, enjoyment, and environment. So it's not so much about, the drill sergeant berating you because you didn't get up at 5 a.m. this morning and go for your run. It's very much about this notion of looking for things that are potentially easy to do, and that might be small amounts of times, but they're enjoyable to you. But it also involves some sort of environmental consideration. So that might be doing it with a family member. It might be getting outside with a pet if they haven't been for 5 walks already that day. But it's looking for ways to connect with what's around you and what's available. So that might be the backyard. It might be walking down the street. It might be, when you're getting out and visiting others. For me, I think that's a really useful way to think about mental wellness. Is this notion of developing new habits, or at least trying things to see whether they work for you or not, because that's part of how we learn and do things differently.
Yeah, I really like that. If I might just kind of build on that, and from a habits perspective, what are kind of healthy habits? And I'm a massive fan of Dr. John Arden, a neuropsych out of the US, and one of his models of, well-being, or his model of well-being, and these 5 different things that we can do that really contribute to us being, healthy and well. We've already talked about quite a lot of it. Social connectedness, making sure that you have those, you build and maintain those relationships that really nourish and protect. To Dave's point, education, continuing to learn and build new neural pathways, which are going to make sure that we have brain health into later life. Exercise, making sure that we are still finding ways to do the exercise that we need to stay healthy. And that's one of the topics that we're going to talk about in a later session. What can we do to stay as physically able as we possibly can, even if we can't go to the gym or play golf or whatever it might be, so that we can stay functionally mobile, so that when we do have the opportunity to get back to hopefully what is normal, that we're still in a physical shape to be able to do that. So that's SEE. D being diet, and making sure that we're still finding ways to eat a balanced diet. And I would include healthy drinking habits in there. I think stuck at home, it can be really easy to fall into the trap of opening a can early days. So yeah, just being mindful of what it is that we're putting into our bodies, because there's a clear link between mind and gut health. And then the last one is sleep. So making sure that we're forming healthy sleep habits. So to Dave's point, making sure that there are those work-life boundaries. I'm not sure if you can see, I'm actually in my bedroom. It's where our workstation is set up. So once we sort of finish here, I'm going to make sure that I actually walk away from here, shut everything down, because when I come back in here, I want it to be a place for sleep. So forming those good sleep routines so that I'm still getting enough of that restorative time that the body needs, both physically and mentally. So that's 4 or 5 things, the acronym SEEDS. So I'll share a little bit about that after the session as well. Colin, any thoughts on other ideas or things that people can do to keep themselves well?
Yeah, look, I just think there's Sandy and Shauna and a couple of other people have put some notes there about concerts and things like that that are available, freely available. There's lots of musicians that are out there now making their concerts available for free. Obviously, to a lot of the younger or middle-aged generation, that's going to be very helpful because you can get onto the mediums. I find I'm actually not doing Facebook myself at the moment, but I am doing Messenger. And Messengers, I think, is really good because there's so many funny things that have been advertised at the moment. People are coming up with all sorts of things, and it's very quick and easy to forward on to people. So I've found in the last couple of days that I'm actually talking to people on my Messenger that I haven't spoken to for a year or more, and I'm just sending them a quick either thumbs up or something that's really funny, things like that. So all of a sudden it starts a conversation. So they're things that are helping me, and I'm sure will help others. The older generation, I think, if we're able to, so my grandchildren put on house party and things like that, so we get on that together with them, and when they celebrate birthdays, we do virtual birthdays. And so I think we're coming up to Anzac Day. There's lots of things, and probably later in the discussion we'll talk about Anzac Day, but there's things that we can do together on social media, that we can have parties and things like that. And my daughter, who lives overseas, it was her birthday a week and a half ago. We got up in our time zone, thankfully, and she was in the morning, and we each had a cocktail drink for her birthday. So things like that I think are helpful for everybody. So.
Colin, I mean, that's a good point. Anzac Day this year obviously isn't going to be like Anzac Day ever before. It's a day in the year that I look forward to. I don't wait to. I have all sorts of different mixed emotions about. But it's a day that I do, and yeah, I guess I do look forward to. Despite those mixed emotions, what's Anzac Day looking like through Caulfield RSL this year?
Well, we're still in the process of discussing it. What we will do is support the nationwide, the stand at your front door or stand at your front gate thing that's going through the nation at the moment. We'll support that. We're also looking at if I can get the bugler to come down to the club, possibly at 10 o'clock. So it's mid-morning. If any of you are aware of the service that we normally hold, we usually have a bugler that does the last post in the dawn service that we have, or the morning service. So we might get him a little later if he's willing to come. And I'll probably go down there just so there's only two of us at the club, and I'll raise and lower the flags, so that the Australian New Zealand flag, so that we have a presence there, and the people in our area will know that we are there and that we're an RSL and still surviving. So, but I would implore people to go to their front gate in line with the national push. Let's show the world that we're still there. The RSL is still here, and we're honouring the people that went before us, and all those that suffered and came back from war as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Colin. I did want to make sure that we had some time for Q&A, sort of as we wrap up. I haven't really got any questions that have come through, but I'm just going to ask, say something more, ask one more question. And if anyone does have any questions that they want to put through to either Dave, Colin, or myself, please type those away. Colin, Dave, when I reflect on my military service, the skills I learned and the qualities that I kind of feel that brought forward through that service mean me and my family are actually in a pretty good position to navigate the current challenge. I sort of think about, I guess, resilience, hardiness. Dave, you sort of mentioned before around, what was it you said earlier about finding novel ways to overcome challenges in difficult environments. To me, those are some of the qualities that position us well to navigate this situation. So what else do you sort of see as being qualities that you think our members might be able to draw on from their service to help get through?
I don't know if this is just an Australian Armyism. I don't even know if Armyism is the right word, but I'll run with it. Hurry up and wait. Is that? Yeah. We all know that. Yeah. So, you know, what does that mean for me? I don't want to over psychologize silly sayings, I guess, but for me, the gold in that is this notion that we do have the capacity to endure. You know, that's something that's for want of a better word, trained into us, and as a result of our experiences, whatever they might be, in any operational or training environment. And you know, for us, it's this notion of allowing us an opportunity to know that this will pass. And sure, it's going to be difficult, and you know, there'll be challenges. But for me, I think one of the really useful ways to think about it is it's not so much what happens; it's how we respond to it that's important. And you know, that's one of the great things that I took out of my service was we dealt some pretty ordinary cards, whether it be service life or otherwise. But you know, the people that do well are the ones that acknowledge that they've had difficulty and look for different ways to respond to that, as opposed to accept the event as defining.
Thanks, Dave. I like that. Colin, anything to add from your experience?
Well, my military service was so long ago. So to do the takeout, I was just thinking 48 years ago. But the one thing I still have with me from that day is obviously the disciplines that they teach you. And I'm not talking about the hard discipline, but the disciplines that they actually teach you, like getting up, like doing things in a timely fashion, being responsible, helping your mate. So I think those things are helping me right now, and they've helped me right through my life. But particularly now, where you know social distancing is so important, you need to have some form of discipline. But the other side of it, I think, is also the tolerance and patience that you learn in the services. That's going to be invaluable, I think, in the next month. Because as I said, we've already had 1 month and we're in a bit thin. So in the next month or two, I think that tolerance and patience will certainly help.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's kind of been bouncing around my head is this whole idea of grief. When people lose a loved one, it seems like in the immediate aftermath, there's this massive rallying around a person, and they're showered with attention and love and support, and over time people go back to their day-to-day life, but this person's still living with this grief. And I think I'm reflecting on my mother who lost her husband last year. It seems to me like that's when it gets hard, the longer that it goes on, and there's less and less of that connectedness because people continue just to live busy lives. So I think, yeah, it's going to be really important for us to maintain those, I guess, those disciplines and those that connectedness and all of those different habits that are going to put us in a good position, both individually and collectively, to get through this in a good space. I think just before we wrap up the conversation, maybe a little bit more light-hearted, but if we were to reconvene this panel 12 months on from tonight, and we sort of come out the other side of this thing, what's one key thing that you hope we as a society will be able to look back on with pride?
I'd like to think that we've developed a more effective means and multiple means of maintaining connection and maintaining our social supports. That's my hope as glass half full, Dave.
Yeah, mine's much the same. I've just got down here that I would, with all honesty, like to be able to say that we're better neighbours, and we're much more empathetic. So very similar, Dave. It's communicate.
Yeah, I love that about neighbours, right? Like, do we actually know our neighbours? Yeah, can we actually build relationships and get to know what someone else's experience is like, and I guess co-author that experience. Yeah, thank you both very much. Just whilst I guess I'm going to ask you two to ponder one key message or thought that you want to leave our audience with tonight, or one key message from the conversation. A couple of the key points that I took away from the conversation really are that pretty much any emotion, be it challenging or not, be it fear, anxiety, distress, are all natural, normal kind of reactions to what the situation that we find ourselves in. And it's I guess it's how we manage those challenging thoughts and emotions when they come up with us to make sure that we're responding in effective ways. It's going to be really important. That whole idea of looking out for one another, looking for changes in people's behavior that might indicate that things aren't going so well for them, and having the courage and the care, the genuine love for someone that you actually care enough to have that difficult conversation that Dave spoke about becomes really important, and to encourage them to get help even if they don't want to talk to you about it. And then some of those tips that came up about social connectedness and forming those healthy habits that are going to serve us in a good stead were probably a couple of the key things that I really took out of the conversation. How about for you, Colin, Dave? One key message or thought that you want to leave the audience with tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to probably say that, look, as a nation, we're learning patience and tolerance, and that's a good thing. But I think in this time, I would like to, I just jotted this down, we should take time to smell the roses. We're here, we've got this time. Let's take the time to smell the roses. And of course, the same old thing, don't forget to wash your hands.
There's a psychologist in you, Colin. You're talking about being really present and mindful. I love it. Yeah, taking the time to stop and smell the roses, I think that's fantastic. Thank you. Dave.
Yeah, look, going back to one of the comments I made earlier, it's very much about how do we build these healthy habits around good social connection, and for me, one of the ways that I can conceptualize that is, how do we step outside our comfort zone currently and connect or even reconnect with some of our key supports that we might not have spoken with in the last week or 2 weeks. Stop putting it off. Give them a call. If not tonight, it might be a little bit late, depending on who they are. But organise to catch up with them tomorrow. FaceTime, Skype, WhatsApp. Actually get that FaceTime, because there is true benefit in connecting with the people that you love and the people that are important to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Dave, Colin, I guess that wraps up the conversation for this evening. I am indebted to you both. Thanks for giving of your time and your wisdom so freely to support our members. I really do appreciate it. Thanks to all of you at home for tuning in and joining the conversation. I love that there are so many different comments that come through. I'm not sure if everyone can see those, but lots of stuff that are being shared by people and that was weaved into the conversation. Hopefully you can join us on Thursday evening from 7 o'clock, when we'll be joined by Cameron Griffiths, the Caulfield RSL manager, who also happens to be a qualified PT, and Mr. Ben Gold, the director and owner of Home Physio Melbourne and Physio to Mums New York. And they'll be sharing their tips and advice on how to stay on top of your physical health whilst we're in isolation or lockdown, or at least socially distanced. I guess until then, be calm, be kind, stay home, and I think we've got this team. Thanks so much. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, John. Stay well.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Colin. It's a pleasure.
Bye, Dave.